Hello YouTube, Morkez Marihser here. I don't talk much Sonic on the channel, and there's no particular reason why not. Granted, if I'm looking for a blue thing to destroy robots and humiliate excessive facial hair, I'll typically add a squeeze of lemon. But I'll be damned if Sonic Generations isn't an important game in my life. I still remember playing the original in 2011 on my poor excuse for a PC with that god-awful Steam launcher. Even barely functioning, Gens was and remained my favorite game in the franchise for quite a long time. But how could one improve it? Well, several ways actually, but the biggest was that we just needed more of it. So imagine my surprise when along came... No, the solution is surprisingly a lot more sophisticated than that. An infusion of everyone's favorite side character, Eggman the Gun Maria. The idea to pull a Bowser's Fury with an equal, if not superior game mode was brilliant. It's like someone at Sega picked up a magic wand and said,
Higatus, Figatus, Bigatus, Catatus.
And now Sonic X Shadow Generations is, bar none, the best release in the franchise. Though not only does it feel like cheating, it also fails to acknowledge a couple things on the Sonic side that are objectively worse. But you know what's unrelated to all that? The stages! You know, the entire premise of the game? Time Eater? Forget it. Black Doom? Piffle. We're just here for the sweet, gooey nostalgia. So today I'll be ranking the main acts in Sonic X Shadow Generations, the unwieldy title. That is 31 levels, including the DLC level, and heck, because why not, I'll throw in the bosses as well. I didn't use any strict criteria for this, but if you're wondering what I had in mind, look on screen right now and you'll see my general thought process. Your thought process might have been a bit different, and I forgive you. So grab your nearest chili dog, which I can't actually eat, is that why I don't make Sonic videos? And enjoy my ranking of all main stages in Sonic X Shadow Generations. I am so sick of that name. This is the closest thing the game gets to an outright bad level. The beginning section is actually very strong, and then we start entering the factory. Then it's only mildly annoying until the minecart and rocket sections grind everything to a halt. At that point it's certainly novel, but is it really worth it? Plus, like, orange rocket? Really? I'd take laser, drill, or even hover. Instead, we get boosting up. I don't mind a good water level, but this is the least fun that Classic gets. So much of this is either, you better jump over the water or else you'll be down there for ages. Plus, the layered design comes down to, try and escape to the background layers, cause that looks more fun. In fairness, they let you do that, but it takes up a lot of time. But hey, we've got killer whales! That has to count for something! Some of the classic stages do risk running way too short, and this one avoids that altogether by going way too long. I mean, don't get me wrong, pink spikes are a way better wisp choice than orange rocket, but the sheer amount of crap you gotta dodge while solving puzzles with it makes it a huge slog. That big jump at the end feels less like, yay, I did it! And more like, thanks Solaris Almighty, I'm free at last! Okay, every Shadow level is at least pretty good, but this one is frustrating. The pieces are creative, but put them together and it doesn't feel cohesive. And they're all tied together by way too much Doom morph. The stage requires mastery to get to the fun routes, whether or not they're faster. I guess that accurately represents Frontiers, but I don't know. Also, the music features a snoring Cubot. So played right, this level zooms by way too quickly, barely over a minute. Played wrong, it goes underwater, but nowhere near as egregiously as Seaside Hill. You shouldn't have to purposefully drop to a slower route in order to make the length more satisfying. That's kind of not how Sonic works. Still, the original still includes the best aspects of the original chemical plant, complete with opportunities to avoid the ooze. But then the level barely lasts as long as an ice cube on a hot sidewalk. The beginning and end sections of this level are a ton of fun. The rest?
The hell was that noise? It was
chaos control is used really well here with the falling stacks of platforms. Unfortunately, that is the only source of satisfying shortcuts in my opinion. For the rest, it's basically just a side view on rail grinding. The scenery also does nothing for me with this perspective, until the very end, of course. This is way too much of a good thing. We've had so much radical highway tripping out that once we have a full lengthy stage of it doubling down, it is exhausting. The design isn't bad, although the S-rank runs on this are hell, but I kinda wish we got to see what a good 2D stage with a trippy gameplay loop could do. Or maybe a hybrid like most modern Sonic stages. But as it is, it's fine, I enjoy it enough. And the music, while all over the place, at least isn't... From the most overwhelming complex level in the entire game to the complete opposite in the very beginning. Mind you, didn't plan this. All this level needed to be was a competent mechanical showcase with all the old stuff in the new physics and art style. And I guess someone at Sega grabbed that magic wand and said,
Huckety Puckety Tom Wachowski.
So we get an effective introductory stage, with secrets and shortcuts and plenty of chances to use the overpowered spin dash. Great start. This is the first time a fully 3D environment has been adapted into 2D, and the results are okay. It's certainly memorable, with a lot of hazards and a lot of unique interactions with the bells and signs and escalators. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of standing and waiting for moving platforms as well. To their credit, this is the first time they couldn't just copy and paste anything from the original, and they didn't. This is somehow the only time in the game where we can use Doom Morph in 2D, and it makes us pay way more attention to the walls. Personally, I really like how Doom Morph controls in 2D. I wish we got more of that and less like the other aspects unique to this level, like the ancient boulders and the sinking elevator thing. It works for a puzzle, but it's not as fun as the rest of the platforming. Act 2 does not share Act 1's problem of being too short whatsoever. You will be on this stage for quite a while. The weakest aspects involve the water and the block stairs, but I'd much rather modern over classic for that. Plus, it's conceptually amazing. The way it starts and ends is not only great expansion on the original concept, but it's also great visual storytelling, as we've apparently wrecked the whole joint. Once the night of the Game Awards hit, Sega grabbed that magic wand and said... Okay, yes they did, but aside from that...
Klaatu Barada Knock the Weasel!
And they dropped a pretty fun level, in concept. It's definitely unique and fun to mess with Tokyo, but the stage should only last you 3 minutes. Half that time is going to be spent in cutscenes you can't skip, a QuickTime event you can't fail, and to Keanu Reeves who chose not to act today. All in all, it's still the closest thing this game has to a Shadow the Hedgehog level. Somehow. This is a tricky one to cover. It's very satisfying to nail the jumps between hazards, but it's super frustrating if you fail. The scenery is simply out to kill you, past the point where I feel it's mere proficiency deficiency. However, the rule of cool absolutely comes in here. There's a certain novelty to the way it all looks and handles, and you get to do a lot of cool stuff with the clock and the barrels. If Act 1 teased the game, Act 2 sold it. This level is gorgeous, but that wouldn't be enough on its own. Repeated runs will loop back to the same few scripted set pieces, so you can't branch out that much. But that it gives you so much to see and look forward to makes it one of the best intro levels since... Actually, a lot of Sonic games peak early, don't they? Huh. Is it stupid to say that this level's a bit too on rails? Yeah, I had that coming. Far more than the original, this one gives you the chance to experiment, although instead of finding different pathways, it's about getting through your current one faster. You bypass the different obstacles, hasten the rail switching to your advantage, and out with the trains with chaos control. Notwithstanding the radical highway padding, which is better here than most cases, this level is a very directed, if a bit straightforward, roller coaster. Or should I say, railer coaster? Moving on. Is this really a Forces level if it lasts more than a minute? It's another straight rush, but once again you get to hasten it by just doing cool things with the environment, like combining chaos control and falling debris, or using Doom Blast to cut an optional shortcut just because you got there soon enough. The scenery with the Death Egg robots is also great. It's only really dragged down by the unwieldy Radical Highway segment. It still plays well, but placing it right before the end makes it feel especially like padding. I mean, that's one way to prevent this level from being short, but come on. Unlike the last two spots, this one is not a straight rush, having so many split pathways that are very difficult to reach. Once you pull them off, it feels so satisfying. For whatever reason, even in 2024, we still have to deal with the awkward pop-in we did in 2011. But ignoring that, they still have some of the best content from the original, along with a couple of decent 2D segments in between. It's also the level where the drifting could trip you up really easily though, not the game's best mechanics, so I can't put it much higher. Holy Moses, Sonic 06 is amazing now! The 3D sections are so cool and satisfying, so much adrenaline, but they are brutal. You cannot go off-road here without taking significant risk. That's kind of like the Dreamcast era in a way, although I do wish that extended to the 2D segments somewhat. But either way, this is a fun rush through the fire and flames. Also, it actually works! And yet I like the classic version even better? Well, call me nuts, but someone at Sega must have grabbed that wand and said,
Azarath Metreon Master Zik!
Because the first 2/3 of the level are fantastic, making excellent use of the spin dash and with plenty of tricky skips. Even without the fire shield, you'll have a blast. The only downside is the rather unfair portion by the fire spout with the wind, but you know what? That starts with an amazing bait and switch, so I can't even be mad. I mean, technically I could if I wanted to be pedantic, but nah. From here on out, even my complaints are more than made up for. Technically, this is an introductory stage, really just showcasing the new perspective on the same abilities, as well as more focus on elements from Final Chase. It doesn't seem like much to begin with, and then Shadow grows wings. Suddenly you're playing this amazing power trip, it's awesome. But even when that doesn't happen, there is still so much to interact with, and the sense of speed isn't lost a single iota. Let me address something real quick. This, in my eyes, should have been the final act of the game, preceded by a non-crazy Radical Highway act. Or, alternatively, followed by a Black Comet level. But that's enough about what we didn't get, let's talk about what we did. And what we got was a very climactic level that starts scripted and ends up with a lot of flexibility. Plenty of options with the wings, and even plenty without. The level of challenge is just right here. In my eyes, better than Act 2. Question time! How to take the most famous 3D Sonic set piece of all friggin' time and turn it into a 2D classic level. Well, take every major element and either have Sonic rush through it, or have it try rushing through him. This truck is out for blood, and timing is key to avoiding, but once you do, it is so satisfying. Throw in a Smooth City Escape remix and call it a day. Avoiding the Death Egg robots by chaos control, surfing through sewers, tossing spears to activate springs, there is so much going on here, and it is so well put together. The whole thing has a suitably dreary atmosphere that Act 1 doesn't, and it complements the design so well too. Even the remix of the song. Oh my god, again, Forces, you could have been great! What happened? It does say something that Shadow Generation starts on a final level, and one that belongs to Sonic at that. Right. Either way, this fits really well. It's deep, but not too difficult. Simplistic, yet it has its own unique gimmicks. And it offers just the right amount of tutorial for everything the player will be doing, especially Chaos Control, including the only quick time event in the game where you actually have to try. Interesting choice. In some parts, putting this one not around the top is considered sacrilegious. But here on the Morkez Marihser channel, we serve sacred steaks with spicy fries. Honestly, if not for the opening asphalt boarding section and Shin Truck-kun being such an adrenaline rush at the end, I don't know that I'd rank this one so highly. The middle isn't anywhere near as fun and looks a lot more sprawling than it actually is. But those two sections take up so much of the level and are so damn fun that I have to love it. Would anyone like seconds on that steak? No, I do not put this level on the same pedestal as most. It's close, but there are portions that feel like they slow things down or have cheap moments that lead to failure. Fittingly, they are all indoors, or at least what passes for indoors here, and everything else is fantastic. It also offers one of the best remixes in the game, so that's a further plus. I do flip-flop between the two acts, but in my eyes, this is the best classic stage by a country mile, proving that the weak ones aren't a matter of physics, but level design instead. The split routes with different camera angles showing you where you can go or could have gone are great. The secret routes to various different gimmicks are never intrusive. This is the showcase for what 2D Sonic could be in the modern era, and I've yet to see a title live up to that. I know what I said. We haven't had a 2D stage this good in years, boost or otherwise. It's fast, it's tough, it uses every base mechanic to perfection with shortcuts and alternate routes aplenty. It's like the best of Rush and the best of Generations fused together. It's never boring, it's actually challenging, and the gimmicks don't break the pace whatsoever unless you screw up. It's also the only Act 2 in Shadow Gens without a techno or dubstep remix, and I actually prefer that. This was already one of the most celebrated 3D stages ever. All they had to do was copy and paste it, and they pretty much did. At worst, it risks being a bit shorter, but it really won't feel that way, due to the grind rail section with the clock and the sprawling vistas, and the long arcade-like sprint to the finish at the end of the level. The rest is just so satisfying to parkour through, especially when you're running on the rooftop. Now I get it! Remember how I praised the varied pathways of Speed Highway Act 2? Now take that to another level. Higher routes, often accessed by creative air boosting, lead to different kinds of obstacles entirely. Depending how good you are, you'll have an easier time putting Sonic in a car instead of on the back of a turtle, both of which are still very creative portions of the level. And instead of bottlenecking you through the same set pieces over and over, the level often has parts on the lower paths that take you back to the higher ones. It's brilliant! But it's not my number one. Putting 06 content at the top of any positive ranking is as rare as a good meal at Medburger. And yet, someone at Sega must have picked up that magic wand and said,
Bibbidi bobbidi king boom boo.
This is my favorite level in the franchise. It does everything so perfectly. The pathways are so wide open, feeling like a sandbox while still offering proper opportunities for speed and progression. The water adds plenty of variety that controls pretty darn well, even using a mini-boss of sorts. The air, water, grind rail things, whatever they are, aren't mindless. You have to activate them and even dodge stuff with them. And of course, the birds. Doomwing? No thanks, I got a Tolkien Ex Machina right here. It also helps that the flow is not interrupted by a radical highway section this time, and that the level is still long enough without it. If this is the future of 3D Sonic, we've got a lot to look forward to. That wraps up the stages. Now, as promised, on to the boss battles. In case you're wondering, I did play hard mode for these, but I didn't factor them that much into my ranking. And besides, if hard mode is supposed to fix anything, you should have just made it good to begin with. And if you must know my thoughts on the 3DS bosses as well, as if it's some kind of life or death matter for you to know such a thing. 1. See a doctor. 2. Not that doctor. 3. Here they are. Big Arm is piss easy, Bio Lizard's fine but it drags, Egg Emperor really drags, the rival races aren't worth mentioning, and the Time Eater is... I mean, it's fine, I guess. I mean, just about anything's better than... that. There is no defending this. It doesn't control well. That's a homing shot. Swapping character is actively detrimental. At any point, the Time Eater can just stall out the fight for no reason. That's a homing shot. The graphics for the final attack aren't even finished. That's a homing shot.
Shut up, Dale!
This is a long fight with many different ways to damage the boss. But whether you'll get lucky and be able to attack him sooner as opposed to having to wait out the repeated ice attacks feels arbitrary and random. Plus the pretty scripted sequences where you go into freefall, complete with portals that give a lot of chances to see parts of the arena you're not supposed to. There's a good boss in here somewhere, but it needed more testing. Excellent choice for the first major boss, but a bit unthreatening. The only difficulty here comes from lining up the bombs so you can actually jump on the arms afterwards, but you're in no danger besides. While it is serviceable, I do wish more of its attacks were used to spice things up a little. Kind of a problem when this is one of the only Sonic side bosses with a strategy besides try winning. To its credit though, the strategy is very clear and reactive, seeing how Silver manipulates the debris and using that to your advantage. So why only number 8? The end section, where running out of boost can actually lose you the fight. While that hasn't happened to me, I have seen it happen to friends, and I can't ignore that. It is pretty dumb. This feels more like a multiplayer mode concept than a boss fight, but at the same time, it's a good multiplayer concept. I like the idea of the two racing towards a power source that lets one finish off the other, but the two don't interact in any interesting way to stop the other along the while. I mean, I guess there's Chaos Spear, but that isn't much. Side note, we should have absolutely played the reverse of this in Shadow Gens, even if he'd lose in the next cutscene. I mean, come on. In all fairness, this isn't a boss, it's a level. But it's a damn fun level, bursting with adrenaline as you dodge what Chaos has done and is still doing to the city, and hopefully not you. You just get in close,
Get up on the Hydra's back!
and then do it again 3 more times. Anyone else think it's funny how a Super Sonic boss takes fewer hits to go down than Silver? And speaking of Super Sonic bosses, oh hi Shadow, where have you been? This is a good interactive chase boss. You're not just dodging his attacks, but actively countering with all the debris. And there are a lot of Easter eggs hidden in the fight if you purposefully draw it out. The game actually remembered that Metal already has Chaos Control, so when you use it, he doesn't freeze up. But man, what even is the power scaling in this universe? I mean, the first time around it took 3 supers to beat this guy. Now it's just a surfer dude. Don't you just love consistency? And now for Naked Metal Sonic, who is short, simple, and incredibly satisfying. I just realized how that sounds. Ignoring how the remaster botches the music cue, this is a perfect classic chase boss. There's just enough attack variety to keep you on your toes, and a sweet final kick at the end. And indeed, it does appear that it was all downhill from here on the Sonic side. Oh well. If the 3DS version didn't make enough changes, that is no longer a problem. It starts just like the original one, then literally mutates and evolves as you go on. Gooey arms, plasma turrets, a giant spirit bomb. This actually feels like it could have been the ultimate life form and not just some random boss design they slapped lore onto back in the day. Yeah, I said it, come at me! This one can get a bit annoying on repeat attempts due to the unskippable cutscenes. That notwithstanding, it's fantastic. It starts with a better Metal Overlord, followed by an actually fun Doom morph puzzle, and then a satisfying finale when Devil Doom goes Neo. All the mechanics are familiar, both to prior super bosses and the rest of the game. Weaving your way through it all feels natural and awesome, aided by a great cover of All Hail Shadow. And once again, wait long enough and you'll see some cool stuff. Once again, someone at Sega must have picked up that magic.
Avada Kenpa! Okay, come on now, there's no need for that.
This is a practically perfect boss fight. Mephiles manipulates the environment against you, and you have to punish him with almost your entire kit. The fight evolution is natural too. You get as aggressive as he does, all the while the story beats are perfectly laid out as you go. You can feel his ego, desperation, and fury that he isn't remembered, and you almost feel sorry for the guy. Until you remember this happened and you kick his face in. And don't we all feel better after that? I've heard Sega wants to retry 06 from the ground up, and if we get stuff like this, I can't wait to see it. That just about wraps up everything. And now I want you to tell me where you agree and disagree with me in the comments below. I also want to hear why you disagree with me. The only reason I will not accept is nostalgia, because that's the entire game and we're talking comparatively. If you want to check out more content about going fast, I've got my Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track ranking. It's gotten a bit of attention lately, so check it out if you haven't. And for more content about blue people destroying robots, I've compared every Robot Master design to every NetNavi design in the Battle Network series. If you recognize a certain someone's voice in this video, you'll know what to expect. Or will you? But for now, if you like what you've seen, subscribe to see what I do next. This is Morkez Marihser, thanking you for bringing me to the 2,000 subscriber milestone. And signing off.